We will begin in Exodus chapter 34 today. Exodus chapter 34, beginning in verse 14. But before we read, I will offer a little bit of the context today. We simply have a follow-up from God Jehovah as he is addressing matters pertaining to the Jews. Just emancipated them from their Egyptian bondage. And when Moses was up in the hill for a good while, he had been there for enough time that the Jews started to lose heart and they started to lose their faith. And they says, well, let's go ahead and make us a golden calf. And then Moses came down and he saw the calf, and it became a big ordeal. And it was a couple of weeks ago that I went into some of that story a little bit. That's when the tabernacle was set up and Moses went over to the tabernacle, and God met Moses, as it is written in chapter 33, as if face to face. And then following all that, because of this atrocity that had been committed because of the Jews' idolatrous feelings and behavior, we have this mentioned here in Exodus chapter 34 and verse 14. And God is simply telling them, he's using words to explain to them that this is not to happen. Idolatry is to be totally obliterated from your worship, from your lives. And he says, in the context of our main verse 13, Exodus 34 and verse 13, that you shall destroy their altars, break their images, and cut down their groves. So he's talking about the way he wants them to deal with the idolatrous stuff, the gods, the debauchery, the anything that replaces God. Verse 14, the verse says, you shall worship no other God, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. Now, I just want to stop right there and just notice just a little bit here. This is a unique text. God is many names that he is represented by throughout the Old Testament literature. In fact, it's a really interesting study if you go into it. There's Yahweh, Adonai, and others, Elohim. But this is one where it actually says, the statement is written, his name is jealous. So whenever somebody's name is given in such a way, it's a type of title, a characteristic of quality in this kind of context. Some of us will, whenever, you're acting a certain way, or you're looking good, or there's some kind of essence that you have, like maybe somebody thinks you're cool. So you say, well, cool is my middle name, And that's just a way to make sure everyone knows, what you should be represented by, a characteristic quality. Well, in this particular text, we have an interesting word, and it's usually taken to be a negative word, first of all. Jealousy. In fact, jealousy is mentioned in the scriptures as something that we ought not to partake in, of course, in an envious way, covetousness and things such as that. Being jealous of your neighbor's hot rod or his big house or whatever it might be. And in the Old Testament, in the Ten Commandments, it mentions being covetous of your neighbor's wife, things like that. There are many things that we can allow to consume us and make us want something and get us to behave and think and actually contaminate our soul. But this obviously wouldn't be the case, for God himself does not sin. So when it says that God is jealous, what is that? Is it, first of all, a negative word? When you really stop and think about it, I think in a roundabout way, you can consider it from, it's really not all that bad. It's all it means is God really wants us. He really cares about us. It's not really a bad thing. If God wasn't jealous, he would have never sent Jesus. We'd all be toast. But he's a jealous God. Whenever we think about this in physical terms or in secular terms, it is absolutely normal. This is a very real and applicable thing in our lives. I'm telling you right now, I'm not the jealous type personally, because I just know that Laura can't resist me. But if I saw her behaving and acting around a certain way, like with some other dude, I would get jealous, period. And that's not a bad thing. It would be a bad thing if I didn't get jealous, if it didn't hurt me and harm my soul. And she'll look at me and she'll be like, well, he doesn't love me anyway. He doesn't care. So that's a way that we can apply this. And God uses the marriage relationship often in his relationship to his people. He does that a lot. The book of Hosea, we have talked about that in the past few Sundays or so. I had taken us to Hosea and how he had Hosea actually go and find a harlot or a prostitute for a wife. And she left him. And God said, you go and you bring her back. And he says, that's what I'm doing for you. Because you guys are given to harlotry and you're a whoredom, and you keep on leaving me for all this other garbage, for the gods that are made out of stone, made out of gold, made out of the Silicon Valley, right? You're leaving me to worship other gods, whatever substance is made out of. God says, my name is jealous. And he is a jealous God. I want to apply this a little bit just to our overall generic lives. Take you to the book of Matthew for a little bit and talk about a statement that Jesus makes. The subject of idolatry and covetousness and leaving God and the metaphorical way that it's presented to us. Really what it amounts to is a rejection of making sure that God is supreme in life. That is really what it all amounts to. Matthew chapter 6 and verse 33. We have a statement made by Jesus. And he's actually talking about physical things. The Sermon on the Mount is many abstract terms are used, and spiritual matters of the heart are addressed very directly. But Jesus, in the second half, Matthew chapter 6, starts talking about where your treasure is, there where your heart be also, and don't seek things here on the earth where moth and rust off corrupt. And he starts talking about those kind of things. And then he even uses examples like Moses, or not Moses, but Solomon, the way he was dressed, how We shouldn't be worried about the clothes that we wear. Now, at the risk of becoming very unpopular, I just have to echo what Jesus says. What the clothes you wear just shouldn't be that important to us. It's just a statement that we have to understand. But that's the way society is going. Society is enormously concerned about the way we dress. And when you look at the scripture, it says, don't worry about that kind of stuff. That cannot be your idolatry. That cannot be what you are putting your thoughts and your heart into. And he says, don't even worry about the food that you eat, let alone the clothes that you wear. We ought to be thankful for these kinds of things. So that's the kind of stuff that he's talking about. And in verse 33, Jesus says, but seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and these things shall be added unto you. There's a promise right there, and it's a promise now. The promises in him are yea and amen. As the Apostle Paul wrote. The Apostle Paul was talking about how many people stand up and they teach. Many people and many philosophies and many ways of going about things. Things are wishy-washy. Things are yea and nay. He says it wasn't even yea and nay, but it was yea and amen, are the promises in God. And in Matthew 6:33, when he makes that promise, when you seek God first, it's like him saying he takes care of his own. He will provide. And it's not an always easy thing to apply. Not always easy. Not always easy to keep the concerns of this life now, whether it be food, clothing, or something else, or the 401k, whatever it might be. It can be really difficult for us to actually apply these things and practice them. Things distract us and get in our way. And inconveniences can alter our thinking. But the statement that Jesus makes, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, is to be a principle that we live by. Not simply just in order, but in principle and value. God is to be number one always and all the time in our lives. Now I'd like you to go with me and think about one of the consequences of not putting God first and going to idolatry in whatever form it is. And we are now going to be taken to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 24. And as you're turning to Deuteronomy chapter 24, as I just said, ignore 24 and go to Deuteronomy chapter 32, because I told you the wrong chapter. Deuteronomy 32. Now we are at the tail end of the 40 years of wandering after the Jews had shown over and over and over again, which of course we Christians are superior to, because we don't do that kind of thing. We don't leave God behind, right? Except for when we actually take notice and do actual observation and examination and realize, man, I think I did it this morning already. I started putting something before God in my mind and in my emotions. So then I started to realize there's a lot I got to learn from this kind of stuff, and how important it is to learn from these lessons, because we are just as human as the Jews were. As easy as it is to see their story, it is still extremely applicable to us. Deuteronomy chapter 32. One of the things that is happening here, I'll just give you a very brief synopsis of what Deuteronomy is. It's like the second law. It's like the a condensed version of the law. And it's like Moses' final address to his people. He spoke many words to them, and he had to address them many times throughout the 40 years that they wandered throughout the wilderness. He gave them much of the law in the second half of the book of Exodus, Numbers, and Leviticus. There's so many commandments that were given to them. And you know that there were actually times, there's that moment when Moses had to deal with individual issues, and his father-in-law saw that he was sitting there. He was like sitting there, waiting for people, like a line of people that went all the way out the door and around the block and around, people needing to have Moses make judgments on all these individual issues. And his father-in-law said, "What are you doing? You're going to go mad doing this." So he tells him to set up, a hierarchy, to have people who are rulers over the tribes and all this, so that they can take their matters to Moses, and he wouldn't be dealing with each and every single individual matter. But the point I'm making is Moses had to say many things to his people. But in Deuteronomy, it's like the final thing, the final reminder when he's telling them, okay, you guys are about to go over the Jordan from the east into the west, into the land of Canaan that flows with milk and honey. And there's some things you really need to remember, you really need to keep in mind. And one of the things that he did was he brought them into reflection and reminded them of many of the things that had happened before. So in Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 21, there is an interesting reflective statement that's made, and then a prophetic statement in the second half of the verse that I'm going to show you. It says, "They have moved me to jealousy with that which was not God. They have provoked me to anger with their vanity." That's the reflective statement. That's him recalling the historical perspective, pointing out that this is what my people have done. They did it. They went to other gods. They went to these idolatrous images. They have provoked me to jealousy. They went to other gods, and I am a jealous God, and I talked about that. This is not a bad thing. This is not bad that God got jealous here. It's a good thing. It means he loves us. They provoked me to anger with their vanities. So then he makes a prophetic statement following that. "I will move them to jealousy with those which are not a people. I will provoke them to anger with a foolish nation." Now the Apostle Paul quotes this text in Romans chapter 10 when he is doing one of the most interesting things in the New Testament text that I think of anyway. I think that Romans chapters 9, 10, and 11 is some of the most interesting doctrinal writing in the New Testament. And the reason why is because of the way Paul weaves in all this Old Testament stuff and this history into what is happening now. Now, this was 2,000 years ago, so it's not happening now. However, the scriptures has a way of doing things and writing things as if they're happening now. In fact, Tony just mentioned before class today, Isaiah chapter 5 and verse 20, it says, "Woe unto them who call evil good and good evil, and call light dark and darkness light, and make bitter sweet and sweet bitter." And we just had a little conversation about that. And he was saying, isn't that the way society is right now? Everything that is good, they are just slapping in the face, and you're being guilted into that which is good. But if you're doing weird, icky, evil things, then hey, you're being praised, and they slap the name pride on it to make it look good, right? And it's just a way that society is shifting away from God's ways and away from his creation, away from what he would have us to do, and into some humanistic way of looking at things, which of course is a creation of the devil, of course. So when Paul quotes Romans chapters or Deuteronomy in Romans chapter 10. I'm going to give you just an overall idea of what's going on there. Because the Apostle Paul was the apostle who was called to the Gentiles. Peter was sent to the Jews. Paul was sent to the Gentiles. And he, in his writing to the Romans, now if you think about the Roman epistle, very culturally appropriate, because Rome was kind of like the New York City of the time, was it not? Or the San Francisco of the time, or the big city, I don't know, London, right? What's another city? Brentwood, I don't know. Some big city, right? Pocatello, Idaho. But Rome was the crux, was the merging point of so many different cultures, so many different ways of thinking. Some people were able to purchase their way into becoming Roman citizens, and it was a very, very desired thing to be a Roman citizen. The Apostle Paul mentioned it. And when he was talking to, I think it was Felix, one of those guys, one of those officials, when the Apostle Paul said, well, I'm a Roman, the guy looked at him and said, you're a Roman? Do you have any idea what I had to do to become a Roman citizen? That was kind of the way that that dialogue went. That was a big deal. Rome was a big deal. It was a superpower of the world. And so when he's writing to these people, he's writing to a place of status, and he's writing to people of many different backgrounds, Jews and Gentiles. And in addressing the Jews, he says, they provoke me to jealousy. He quotes this text. Well, I'm going to go ahead and use jealousy against them too. God says, I'm going to make the Jews jealous. And I'm going to leave them behind. I'm going to go to the Gentiles. And then the Jews are going to say, wait, hold on. Now, we're the superior religion. No. Now, you guys ain't nothing. Now it's about being Christian. And that is something that happened during that period of time. And Paul actually says, and he says, I'm going to use that same kind of thing. And well, man, I mean, if Paul could use jealousy to preach the gospel, then why can't I use jealousy to preach the gospel? Why can't anyone use jealousy to preach the gospel? Why can't we do that? So let's go ahead and try it. So kind of see what happens. And I think it all kind of come together. I think you'll see what I'm doing, and I think you'll appreciate it. If you don't appreciate it, well, come and talk to me, I guess. Well, I'm going to now take you to Matthew chapter 25 to apply this. Matthew 25. We'll begin reading at verse 31. Now this is Jesus just around the corner from being betrayed. Some of the last statements, some of the last parables that he will offer before he is actually to go to the cross. And he says in verse 31, when the Son of Man shall come in his glory and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory. As I read, thus saith the Lord, the words which proceeded forth from the mouth of our Savior Jesus, God in the flesh. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word is with God, and the Word was God. That was Jesus. As we read, you are permitted to use your imagination to see what this is going to look like. Just kind of experience it through the words. Because the Son of Man is going to come in his glory. He's talking about the coming of Jesus. Now, I don't know. Now, I've seen some pretty amazing and majestic things in my life, but I can only imagine Jesus coming in the glory with his angels. I mean, what's that song that we sing, 10,000 angels? I mean, what 10,000 soldiers would look like an enormous sight to behold. What about 10,000 angels? You just stop and think about that for a second, and your brain's going to just going to be overwhelmed when you stop and think about that. Go ahead and close your eyes and think about 10 angels. Ouch. Now think about 10,000 angels. That's a lot more zeros than 10. So that's the image that Jesus is speaking into existence as a prophetic saying here. And he will sit upon his throne of his glory. Verse 32, and before him shall be gathered all nations. I don't know how that's going to look. I don't know if it's going to be like that long line that I talked about with Moses, a long line of people around the corner, wrapped around a couple billion times. I don't know, but all the nations will be gathered together, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divides his sheep from the goats. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you since the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. Naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink, or see you as a stranger and take you in, or naked and clothe you, and saw you sick or in prison and came to you? And the king shall answer and say unto them, verily I say unto you, inasmuch as you have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, you have done it unto me. Then shall he say also unto them on the left hand, depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, you did not feed me. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, you did not take me in. Naked, and you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison, and you visited me not. Then shall they answer also him, saying, Lord. Now, this is a different answer. Verse 44. This one's different. This one's different, see. And they're also going to be jealous of the people that got into him. They're going to be jealous. Because you can kind of sense, verse 44, the way they responded. You can sense the feeling. You can yourself kind of wonder, as if this is like a false accusation against me. How would your reaction, how would your response be if you received a false accusation? You would say, whoa, Jesus. Come on now, Jesus. When did we ignore you? When were we in this position when you were hungry? We didn't feed you. Jesus. Now, but when did these people do it? I mean, you can see now the Deuteronomy 32 when God says, "You left me and you provoked me to jealousy. I'm going to make you jealous. I'm going to make you jealous of people you're going to be surprised you're going to be jealous of." And these people are shocked at this. They're shocked at this response, this reaction. No. When did we see you hungry, thirsty, stranger, naked, sick, or in prison, and we didn't serve you? And he's going to say in verse 45, he shall answer them, saying, verily I say unto you, even so much as you did it not to one of the least of these, you did it not to me. And you shall go into everlasting punishment, but the righteous, the life everlasting. Now, there's kind of two levels of jealousy that I want us to think about and talk about right now. And this is just a good word moving throughout our existence, as we're navigating through life. And as you are now here with me this morning, these are just the words that are flowing out from the pages into our hearts and our souls, causing us to look at our lives and ask the question, am I the goat or am I the sheep in this text, in this parable? And there are people that were ignored in the story. There are people that were not cared for in the story, in the parable. There were people, now there's a certain way that Jesus describes them, usually people that were less fortunate. Now there's many different kinds of less fortunate, and I just want to describe it in this way, that people that don't seem to be as holy, maybe the people who are less popular, maybe the people who I don't like the way that they look, maybe the people I don't get along with as well, maybe the person who offended me 10 years ago or said something 10 years ago or acts a certain way around me that makes me uncomfortable, so I don't really engage with that person the way I know I should. And whenever there's a need, I don't even know about the need. I'm not even aware of the need. Whenever Dave gets up there and gives us this list of people to pray about, I kind of let it go in one ear and right out the other. I don't really think about them much more after that. I kind of say, oh, yeah, pray for people, yeah. But I'm not really thinking about the sick that I really need to be thinking about. I'm not really thinking about the hungry that I really should be really thinking about, because Jesus goes into detail. And it's kind of funny. It always makes me laugh whenever I read this, because Jesus kind of got tired of talking because he gets less detail. The first, he goes into the full thing, verse 37. You saw me hungry and you fed me. When he's talking to the people, the goats, he says, you saw me hungry, thirsty, and he uses less words to explain it, but he uses details. He talks about specific kinds of people. And one of the things that Jesus does not tolerate in his ministry and in the way that he talked and the way that he dealt with people was love that wasn't genuine, a heart that wasn't genuine, was being around people that wasn't pure and for real and wasn't active, loving in word but not in deed. Jesus had a really hard time with that. And we as people, well, Jesus had a hard time with that. Jesus rejected it. We have a hard time with people because people stink sometimes, And the first kind of jealousy that I want us to apply right here and right now is to adopt God's kind of jealousy. Being jealous for each other. Being jealous for souls. Being jealous for interactions with other Christians. Now, I am 100% aware of and understanding of the fact, and so is God, I believe, that God is understanding and totally aware of the fact that we all have our personal lives. We all have a personal family. We all have a personal friends. But I can say right now that it was a very difficult thing to have to travel 20 miles in one direction in order to worship with my spiritual family, and to kind of look around. And the way I grew up, there was like 2 other kids, and to not really have any friends that were my peers, in the church, only just a few. We hardly ever interact. It was a difficult thing. It's something that is easily to be taken for granted, because nowadays the culture has changed. People don't need each other as much as they used to. People don't depend on each other as much as they used to. The culture of showing up with a pie to somebody's house just doesn't really happen as much as it did at one time. And the cultural and sociological reasons for that being the case, that's okay. That's all fine and good. We have to, really understand and realize that we need each other. And it's not just being jealous for each other. It's like, I'm jealous that you're going out hanging out with these people. Why don't you come hang out with one another? That's the kind of jealousy that I'm talking about right now. I think it's a way to apply this jealousy in a certain way. Now, whether we be hungry or thirsty or naked or sick or in prison or in jail or whatever the situation might be, here's the main thing that I want you to really take a look at and think about here. Now, take a look at verse 40. Now, verse 39 and verse 40. We're in Matthew 25, 39 and 40. When did we see you sick or in prison or all that? Verse 38 too. And 37 through 40. The righteous are going to answer, well, Jesus, when did we see this? When did we see you naked? There's an unawareness that's here, isn't there? Isn't that kind of interesting, kind of odd? There's a lack of awareness to what they were doing. I'm sure that they were aware of their genuine, very strong love for one another. I'm sure that was they were aware of that. Like, man, I really love my brothers and sisters. I really love God's people. I really do. But there was an unawareness going on. Now, let's just go ahead and do a little experiment. Do you think perhaps, just perhaps, that some of that lack of awareness might have been to the effect that maybe they were doing it for people without even realizing they were doing it? I don't know if that's true, but I know it's true today. I know it is. You know how I know? I know it's true because I know you look a lot better on Facebook than you look in real life. The picture of me with a booger in my nose and the spinach in my teeth? I don't post that on Facebook, but it actually happened, right? Not me. I never leave the house without checking my nose. I always, it's actually, just to share a little piece of me with you, I'm paranoid. I always have this sucker right here. I never leave the house without this. I'll walk around like this before I walk around with my nose like that. So, anyway. How you doing today? Good. How often are you hurting, or people are hurting when they say they're doing good? It's this mask that we wear. Well, we're wearing masks. Masks is like a way of life now. But there's another kind of mask that we wear because we want people to think we're doing good a lot of the time. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. So maybe you're visiting somebody, you're helping somebody, you're being with somebody, and you're doing something for somebody. You don't even realize what you're doing. Sometimes it's even the stranger that walks by you. Just being a genuine human just changes their life, changes their experience for the whole day. Now, here's something that's really important about this. This is a parable about salvation. Do you think Jesus is serious about this? This isn't a parable. This parable isn't a parable about the peripheral issues. This isn't about arguing over, well, do we take the bread first and then say a prayer, and then, or should it be the juice first? No. It's not one of those kinds of issues that that people argue over. That do we dim the lights during the Lord's Supper, or is that becoming kind of too voodoo in the new age kind of thing? I mean, I've heard those kinds of arguments before in my life. That's not what this is. This is a parable about the sheep being separated from the goats. The goats don't go to heaven, brothers and sisters. The goats don't make it. That's the point of the story. If you missed that part of the story, your ears weren't working right when Jesus told the parable. That's the whole point of the story, of the parable. The goats don't make it. The sheep do. And if I am a goat, I haven't been jealous for souls. I haven't been jealous for genuine love. And I haven't been jealous for God's people. Whether they be hungry, thirsty, naked, or just unpopular. And I'm going to react probably the way the goats reacted and say, but wait, with confusion and jealousy. And I'm going to be jealous of the people who maybe I thought I was better than that person. Maybe I thought I was more holy than those people. But because I didn't put God and his people first, because I allowed other conveniences or distractions to gauge my experience and my behavior, what I do. Like God said in Deuteronomy 32, I will provoke them with things that aren't God. I will provoke them with people who are not my people. I will provoke them to jealousy with a foolish nation. Like I said, the prophetic writings have a way of recycling, you know. It may not be Jews and Gentiles now, but it might be something else. And it's my job to make sure that I'm the sheep in this parable. And Jesus takes us so seriously that he actually self-identifies with the people who needed help. He actually says, if you do it for that person, you did it for me. Do it for them. You did it for me. So the same rejection, or if we treat same way we treat somebody else, the same way we treat Jesus. And the reason why is because Jesus is jealous. That's why. We need to be jealous also. Not of the car and the house and all that. We're jealous for each other. Jealous for souls. And we're jealous for Jesus. And we don't want Jesus giving other people that good old that attention on the judgment day, because you're going to be jealous. If you're that goat, you will be jealous. Wait, I'm supposed to be going to heaven, not that sucker. So he's jealous for your soul today. He's jealous for his saving grace to be with you today. Just another lesson to share a little bit more about who God really is and who he wants us to be. Kind of interesting. He wants us to be jealous, I think. And if we ain't doing the right thing, we definitely going to be jealous. If you don't want to be jealous of salvation, make sure you respond to the gospel call today.